There is a specific window in most people's lives where the number that is supposed to be going up starts quietly going backward. Not because of a job loss, not because of a bad investment, because of timing, because of the way life expenses stack up in one particular decade and hit the financial plan from every direction at once. And nobody warned you it was coming. This happens to the majority, not to people who made terrible decisions, to people with good incomes, stable careers, and every intention of building wealth. The numbers go flat or backward right in the middle of the years that were supposed to be the most productive of their lives. I am Maxine. Welcome to Rich Auntie Knows. Today, I am going to show you exactly when this happens, why it happens, and the specific structure that protects you from it, because this is entirely preventable, but only if you know it is coming before it arrives. Let us get into it. Secret 1. The age where net worth most commonly declines is earlier than anyone expects, and it has nothing to do with retirement. Most people assume net worth drops in retirement, that the drawdown comes when you leave the workforce and start living off your savings. That pattern is real for some households, but it is not the most damaging version of net worth decline. The version that costs the most starts decades earlier. According to the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, the most recent data available, collected in 2022, median net worth follows this arc. Under 35, the median is $39,000. Ages 35 to 44, it rises to $135,000. Ages 45 to 54, $247,000. Ages 55 to 64, $365,000. The aggregate looks like steady growth the whole way up. But what those averages hide is what is happening inside the 35 to 44 bracket to the households that do not navigate the transition correctly. Because within that window, a significant portion of households experience net worth that goes flat or reverses, not from retirement spending, from what happens when the most expensive obligations of adult life arrive at the same time: the mortgage, the second car, childcare consuming 20 to 30% of take home pay for years, student loans still running from the previous decade, a lifestyle that expanded with income and then could not contract when the competing expenses showed up, all of it converging in the same 5 year window. And while all of that is happening, the investment account, the one that was supposed to be quietly compounding through all of it, gets paused. Secret 2. The late 30s spending trap is the most common wealth destroyer in America, and the numbers are bigger than you think. Let me put real numbers on what converges in this decade because the damage is invisible until it is laid out in front of you. According to the National Association of Realtors, the median age of first time home buyers hit an all time high of 40 in 2025, meaning people are buying their first home later than ever before. The median purchase price for an existing home is around $400,000. A 20% down payment is $80,000, removed from your net worth in one transaction, often from savings and investment accounts that took a decade to build. The remaining $320,000 mortgage at 6.6% generates over $21,000 in interest in the first year alone. Not principal, interest, the cost of simply holding the debt. The national average annual child care cost is around $13,000 per child, and significantly higher in metro areas where families routinely pay $20,000 or more. Two children in care at the same time can cost $26,000 to $40,000 a year after tax. That is years of maximum Roth IRA contributions walking out the door every single year. Gone to childcare before a dollar touches the investment account. Now add the car payment. The average new vehicle payment hit a record $767 a month in 2025. The student loan still running at an average balance of $37,000. Health insurance premiums that rose 22% in the last 3 years. And a lifestyle that expanded when income went up and proved impossible to shrink when the obligations arrived. The result is a household that is earning more than it ever has and saving less than it did at 27. That is not a character flaw. That is a structural collision between life stage and financial obligation. Secret three: the investment account is always the first thing paused, and that pause is always the most expensive decision made in that decade. Here is the pattern that plays out in household after household. The expenses arrive, the budget gets tight, a review happens, and somewhere in that review, the investment contribution gets identified as the most flexible line item. The mortgage cannot be paused. The childcare bill cannot be paused. The car note cannot be paused. But the Roth IRA contribution, the $625 a month going into the index fund, that one has a pause button. And the pause feels temporary, practical even. A short term sacrifice to manage a short term pressure. The pause is never short term. Research on retirement savings behavior consistently shows that contribution gaps during the 35 to 45 window stretch far longer than people expect, often years, not the months people tell themselves when they press pause. Even a 4-year gap at $625 a month is $30,000 in contributions that did not go in. At 10% annual return compounded over 25 remaining years, that $30,000 pause cost the portfolio approximately $325,000 at retirement. $325,000 from a pause that felt like the responsible response to a tight season. The pause did not save you $30,000. It cost you $325,000. And nobody ran that calculation before pressing the button because nobody had shown them what the pause actually costs in the currency that matters, not monthly cash flow, 30-year compounding. Secret four: the households whose net worth keeps rising through the expensive decade all do one specific thing differently. The Federal Reserve data contains a detail that almost never gets reported. Within the 35 to 44 age bracket, there is massive variance. The median net worth is $135,000, but the 75th percentile for that same age group is $390,000. The 90th percentile is $860,000. The households in the top quarter are not earning dramatically more. They are doing one thing structurally differently. They automated the investment contribution before the expensive decade arrived, and they never gave themselves the option to pause it. The Roth IRA contribution is set to auto draft on the first of the month. It leaves the account before the mortgage clears, before the child care invoice arrives, before any other obligation has a chance to compete for that money. Then every other expense gets managed within what remains. Not the other way around. Not invest whatever is left after the expenses. Expenses managed within whatever is left after the investment. In 2026, the Roth IRA contribution limit is $7,500 a year, $625 a month. For households in the expensive decade who cannot manage the full $625, the structure still holds at $200, at $100, at $50. Because the habit, the automation that removes the decision from the monthly pressure, is the structure. The amount is secondary to the permanence of it. This is what our grandmothers were doing when they put money in the envelope before the bills were paid. Pay yourself first was not a motivational poster, it was the structure. The households whose net worth rises through the most expensive decade of their lives are the ones who built the investment contribution into their fixed costs before the variable expenses had a chance to claim the space where it was supposed to live. Automate it. Fix it. Do not give yourself the option to pause it. That one structural decision is what separates the households that rise through this decade from the ones that do not. Secret five: recovery from a net worth decline in this decade is possible, but the math is unforgiving about delay. If you are in the middle of the expensive decade and the net worth has been flat or declining, if the investment account was paused, if the debt load grew faster than the asset column, If the number you would calculate today is smaller than you thought it would be at this point, I want to speak directly to you. You are not as behind as the feeling suggests. The majority of households in your age bracket are in the same position. What separates the ones who recover and build genuine wealth from the ones who stay flat through the following decade is the same structure I have already described, but applied now, with urgency, without waiting for the expensive decade to end before restarting what should never have stopped. Here's what the recovery math looks like. A 42-year-old with a current net worth of $80,000, below the median for her age group, who restarts her Roth IRA contribution at $625 a month in a zero-fee S&P 500 index fund today and maintains it for 23 years, arrives at 65 with approximately $700,000 in that account alone. Her total net worth at 65, including any equity built in a primary residence and other assets, crosses into the top 25% of all American households, from below the median at 42 to top quartile at 65, from restarting the contribution that was paused during the expensive decade, not at the beginning, not at the ideal moment, now, because now is the only starting point available. And the math at 42 is still dramatically better than the math at 52. Every year, the restart is delayed does not just cost the $7,500 annual contribution. It costs the $7,500 compounding at 10% for every remaining year. The cost of delay is not the missed contribution. It is the missed compounding on the contribution. That number grows every year. The restart is postponed. The recovery is available. The math still works at 42, at 45, at 48, but it works less well with every year that passes. The age is predictable, which means the protection is too. 5 secrets. One pattern underneath all of them. Net worth decline for most households does not happen at retirement. It happens in the late 30s and early 40s. The decade of converging obligations, paused contributions, and life expenses that arrived faster than the financial structure was built to absorb them. It is the most common and most expensive financial pattern in America, and it is entirely predictable. The mortgage at 38, the child care, the car note, the student loan still running, the investment contribution paused to manage the pressure, and the $325,000 that pause costs at retirement that nobody calculated before pressing the button. Predictable, preventable, with one structural decision made before the pressure arrives. In 2026, the Roth IRA contribution limit is $7,500 a year. The zero fee index fund is available. The auto draft takes one setup. The contribution that leaves your account on the first of the month, before any expense has a chance to claim it, is the single most powerful protection against the net worth decline that takes most households by surprise in the decade they expect it to be their most productive. Here's your one action for this week. Look at your investment contribution. If it is automated and running, verify the amount and calculate what a 10% increase adds to your 30-year balance. If it was paused or reduced at some point, restart it this month at whatever amount is possible right now. Because the month the contribution restarts is the month the compounding that was lost during the pause begins to recover. No month spent waiting accelerates that recovery. Only the restart does. Share this with a woman in your life who is in the expensive decade right now and feeling the pressure of it. Your friend whose investment account has been on pause for 2 years while she manages childcare. Your coworker who keeps saying she will restart when things settle down. Your sister who does not realize that the pause she pressed 2 years ago has already cost her more than she thinks. Things do not settle down before the compounding restarts. The compounding restarts first, and then the financial picture settles. That is the sequence. Start it today. I will see you in the next video.